Colombia is a constitutional, multi-party republic. Presidential and legislative elections were held in 2022. Voters elected Gustavo Petro president in a second round of elections that observers considered free and fair and the most peaceful in decades. President Petro was inaugurated on August 7. The Colombian National Police Force is responsible for internal law enforcement and is under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Defense. The Migration Directorate, part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is the immigration authority. The Colombian National Police shares law enforcement investigatory duties with the Attorney General's Corps of Technical Investigators. In addition to its responsibility to defend the country against external threats, the Army shares limited responsibility for law enforcement and maintenance of order within the country. For example, military units sometimes provided logistical support and security for criminal investigators to collect evidence in high-conflict or remote areas. Civilian authorities generally maintained effective control over security forces. There were reports that members of the security forces committed some abuses. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of unlawful or arbitrary killings, torture and arbitrary detention by government security forces and armed groups, serious abuses in a conflict, criminalization of libel, serious government corruption, violence against and forced displacement of Afro-Colombian and indigenous persons, violence against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex persons, and killings of and other violence against trade unionists. The government generally took steps to investigate, prosecute, and punish officials who committed human rights abuses, although most cases experienced long delays. Many investigations included cases stemming from throughout the armed conflict in the country starting in the 1960s. The government generally implemented laws criminalizing official corruption. Armed groups, including dissidents of the former Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, National Liberation Army, and drug trafficking gangs, continued to operate. Armed groups, as well as narcotics traffickers, were reported as significant perpetrators of human rights abuses and violent crimes, including acts of extrajudicial and unlawful killings, extortion, and other abuses or crimes, such as kidnapping, torture, human trafficking, bombings, restrictions on freedom of movement, sexual violence, unlawful recruitment and use of child soldiers, and threats of violence against journalists, women, human rights defenders, and religious leaders. The government generally investigated these actions and prosecuted those responsible.